All right, 35b at the bottom. Today we talk about the tefillin, the actual tefillin placement, how we put them on, when we make a bracha, and God willing, we'll, if we can, if we have time, we'll conclude with such the halacha of it and the Chabad custom of it. We'll get to, we'll start to see the difference between the head tefillin and the hand tefillin. We'll talk about that in the halachic perspective. And then we'll get to the Hasidic dimension of what the difference between the head tefillin and the hand tefillin, and how the Hasidic dimension of the distinction between the hand and the tefillin are reflected in the halacha that we're going to discuss today. So that's what we are. That's where we are. That's today's focus. Let's begin with the Gemara. Yeah. The way in which the Gemara is set up is a little bit different the way the Shulchan Aruch is. The first halacha we're going to learn today in the Gemara actually comes later in the Shulchan Aruch, so we're going to do that first, then we're going to go back to get to the second halacha. Okay, bottom of Lamed Hey, Amud Beis, 35b. Let's talk a little bit. There's a long list of names here. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Bidri. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines from the bottom of the page. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Bidri. Rav Shmuel bar Bidri says that the word Bidri is so uncommon that Rashi has to tell us it's a name. You shouldn't think it's something else. Rashi says shame, it's a name. That's how uncommon it is. Okay, so Shmuel bar Bidri said, Amar Rav, the name of Rav. Others say that it wasn't Shmuel bar Bidri, the name of Rav, but rather Amar Rav Acha Aricha. Rav Acha Aricha. Aricha could be a title like the long one or the tall one. It's possible, I don't know. Or maybe it's actually his name. Amar Rav Acha Aricha. Rav Acha Aricha Amar Rav Huna, the name of Rav Huna. Amrila. Others say it was neither Shmuel bar Bidri nor was Rav Acha Aricha. Rather was Amar Rav Menachot. Amar Shmuel was Rav Menachot, the name of Shmuel. Okay, so many different traditions as to who said the following statement, and that is Tefillin Tefillin. When does he make the bracha on them? Mishas hanachasan, at the moment of placing them. Eitni, is this the case? Says the Gemara. You make the bracha right when you place them, or after placing them. Amar Rabbi Huda Amar Shmuel, but Shmuel, Rabbi Huda, son of Shmuel, said the name of Shmuel. Kol mitzvahs, any mitzvah, kulon, all the mitzvahs, no exception. Mevarech alein, the bracha has to be made oiver l'asiyosan, prior to getting them done. And here you're telling me that you make the bracha after you already placed them, so you've already done it. You have to make the bracha before you do the mitzvah. This is the halacha. So Amar Abaye and Rava Amar Tavaya both explained mishas hanacha, from the time after placing them, v'ad shas kshira, to the point of tying them. So between putting them on, so you put them on, make the bracha, and then there's knotting them, implying that the knotting of the tefillin is the doing of the mitzvah. And that way, by making the bracha prior to knotting them, you're making the bracha prior to doing the mitzvah. So there's a beautiful long Tosfos here, which we're not going to read, but the bottom line is he throws a bunch of issues into this Gemara. Are we talking about the hand tefillin or the head tefillin? Is the implication then that every day you have loose straps around your tefillin and you're making a knot every single time? We just finished saying that the knot on the head tefillin is a special knot we got from Moshe Rabbeinu that has to look like a daled. So you're supposed to do that every single day? And then if it's supposed to be between putting them on and tying them, so how do you do this? You put your head tefillin on the top front, loose straps, make a whole knot here with one hand while you're holding the other one. Like, how does it work? A whole bunch of problems he throws in there, and he basically comes to the conclusion, and this remains the halacha, that we're not talking about we're not talking about actually knotting it, but rather securing it, fastening it. And even the fastening of it, as we'll learn in the next set of halachas and in the Alter Shulchan Aruch, with the hand tefillin is more important than the head tefillin. So with the head tefillin, for the head generally, I'll explain. When it comes to the head tefillin, the knot's already made, set, and that's it. And you put it on your head. And as we'll learn, the knotting of the head tefillin is just tightening it around your head. When it comes to your hand tefillin, you're actually tightening it. You're tightening the loop. We'll get to that in a moment when we get to the next halacha. You're tightening the loop, thus tying it. And here we have the emergence, or the beginning of the difference between the hand tefillin and the head tefillin. Primarily, the hand tefillin, the commandment is ukshartem, to tie them. So what's the mitzvah of the hand tefillin? Tightening around your arm, making the knot, or you're not actually fully making the knot. The knot's always there, but you're concluding the knot. You're securing the knot. The knot, not just placement. Whereas the head tefillin, the mitzvah is not the tying it on your head, but that they should be on your head. And this is expressed in the verses. The verse says, "Ukshartem lo yisaydecha," you shall bind it for a sign on your hand. So you're binding it to your hand as the mitzvah. Whereas when it comes to the head tefillin, it says, "V'hayu lo tetafet beinecha," there shall be a tefillin between your eyes on your head. So the mitzvah is not the securing it on your head, but that they should be on your head. And as a toughness, but Paneach, the Ragachover elucidates, and we'll get to this when we get to the Hasidic dimension, that the mitzvah of head tefillin is so long as it's on your head. So while it's on your head, the entire time it's a mitzvah. Whereas while it's on your hand, there's no mitzvah while it's on your hand. The mitzvah is tightening it to your hand. That moment is the mitzvah. Leaving it on your hand is only so that while you have on your head tefillin, you're supposed to also have your hand tefillin. Because v'hayu is then they shall be. So while you have your head tefillin on your head, you should also have your hand tefillin. But essentially, there are two different mitzvahs. The hand tefillin, the mitzvah is to tighten it, to knot it, and the head tefillin is they should be on your head. And therefore, the head tefillin, the mitzvah is continuous, so long as it's on your head. Whereas the hand tefillin, the mitzvah is only in the moment that you tighten it. You leave it on, so that while you have your head tefillin, you also have your hand tefillin. Clear? And furthermore, the Rabbi actually says this to explain the Rambam when he lists the mitzvahs. The Rambam lists the mitzvahs, and he lists the mitzvah of the head tefillin before the hand tefillin. And they all ask why. The verses puts the hand tefillin first. And in the way we put it on, we also put the hand tefillin on first. But based on this, that explains that. The mitzvah, as we'll learn in the Shulchan Aruch, the mitzvah of the head tefillin from the Rosh, is the head tefillin is ikar tefillin, is the primary of tefillin. Even though the hand tefillin is a mitzvah on its own, but while throughout the duration of you wearing your tefillin, the head tefillin is primary, because the hand tefillin is only a mitzvah for the moment you put it on. So while you're wearing it the whole time, what's the primary here? The primary is the head tefillin, and as we'll learn, it also has more kedusha, has more holiness, as we said before, because it has two letters of Hashem's name, Shin and the Dalet, as opposed to the hand tefillin which only has the Yud, and therefore the Rambam would write that first, because from the two, the Shal Reish is the primary. For these two reasons, it has more holiness, the shin and the dal, and also, while you're wearing it, the primary mitzvah that you're fulfilling is the head tefillin, because the hand tefillin you only fulfilled the moment you tightened it. So now let's see how that plays into the actual halacha, and we'll see the Chabad custom. So take the Alter Shulchan Aruch, the English, and we're going to need this loose sheet here from the Ktsois HaShulchan. So go to passage 17. You can follow in the Hebrew or the English. I'll read the English because it's easier. The blessings over the performance of mitzvahs should always be recited before the observance is begun, not just before it's completed, before it's even begun. It's a big chiddush here. It's a shtickle chiddush, but that's the way it is. Okay, this is what we learned, right? It has to be done before you do the mitzvah. One should therefore recite the blessings for the arm tefillin after placing it on the bicep, but before tying it, tightening the knot. For this is what constitutes the beginning of the mitzvah, fulfillment of the mitzvah. Beginning of the fulfillment of the mitzvah. Tightening it. So you put it on, and then you tighten it.
You shouldn't be saying the bracha as you're tightening it. You should complete the tightening it. You should... Yeah, right. You should not be saying the bracha in the midst of tightening it. You should say the bracha, finish the bracha, and then tighten it, right?
So it seems, yeah. Yeah.
But by the end, you're yoitza.
Yeah.
But the problem,
Yoitza for sure, but yeah, it seems like that.
Because the question comes up, those are, for example, done early.
Seems like that, yeah.
And they can't put on tefillin yet. So some do put on tefillin, and they'll make the bracha tishtabach. And the mashmesh with tefillin. It's called the tefillin.
We'll get to that. Touch the tefillin, make the bracha. We'll get to that. I'll get to that.
That's what I'm saying. Even though this is ideal.
But this is separate for the bracha making. We'll get to that in a second. In other words, we'll get to that in a moment. But this is with respect to when the mitzvah is done. Because I said there's two halachas that here connect, but we're going to look at one at a time. Okay, so the tightening is the mitzvah, and therefore the bracha is done before. The blessing for the head tefillin, for those who make that blessing, and we'll get to that in the next halacha, should be recited after placing it on the head, but before he fits it tightly in its place. As we just explained, because there's no tightening of the knot, it's the placement on the head, and thus when securing on your head, that's the mitzvah. So the bracha is made after placement, before tightening on the head. For fitting it tightly in place constitutes the beginning of the fulfillment of the mitzvah. One should not, however, recite the blessing before he places the tefillin on the biceps or on the head, because one must recite the blessing in closest proximity to the observance of the mitzvah. But here, if you make the bracha, then put it on, then tighten, then you've done action between your mitzvah, the tightening, and your blessing, which you did before you placed it on your head or your bicep. Okay. That's the basic idea, but let's see this specifically the Chabad way. And I'm highlighting this because I've seen people who have Chabad film but don't appreciate this little detail. So I want to highlight it. So this comes from the Kesher HaShulchan, this loose paper. Kesher HaShulchan is Reb Chaim Na, fairly recent Chabad authority, and he wrote a very extensive work of halacha based on Alter Shulchan Aruch and based on Chabad custom passed down by tradition, and it's widely learned in Chabad. Okay, so in Ches, he summarizes what the Alter Rebbe wrote. Then you put it on, and then afterwards you tighten it, and then he says in the star like this. Look at the star at the bottom. In our custom, referring to Chabad.
I'm sorry, the what? The star?
The star at the bottom.
Ah, I see it.
The asterisk, sorry.
No, asterisk.
Asterisk?
Yeah, I knew what you meant. I just didn't see it.
Asterisk.
Asterisk. It's I-S-K at the end.
Yeah.
Asterisk.
In our custom, says Reb Chaim Na, meaning Chabad custom, based on that which we've received from our Rebbe, referring to the Alter Rebbe, Kesher Shel Yad, to make the knot of the hand tefillin in such a manner, the straps, that he's going to now wrap around his arm, goes through a small loop, which is within the knot. So it's a slip knot. You know, like a slip knot. That if you pull the slip knot all the way, it would unravel. But because your finger because your arm is in the way, when you pull it, it tightens, as opposed to unraveling. Right?
Because there's something blocking the. Yeah.
There's something blocking. Yeah, that's correct. So your loop is part of the knot, is the point he's making here. The very loop that the tefillin goes through is part of your knot, and the loop that your hand goes through is also technically part of the knot. Following? Okay. And not, as the common Ashkenazi custom is, that the strap goes through a loop that's hanging on the other side of the box. In other words, our loop is inside here, so it's a slip knot around your hand with a little hole here, and your tefillin goes through it. The strap goes through it, as opposed to there's a loop that comes out here, and the strap goes through it. Right?
It's a Sephard custom, right?
Isn't that classic Ashkenazi custom as well? Ashkenazi has it on the outside, isn't that right?
No, I mean the Sephard custom is
Because the use is against the box.
No, we're talking about the loop here. Everybody has the use against the box.
Loop.
Yeah, the point here is now this loop that's around your knot, it's around your strap that you're using to tighten. Misracheves will expand, misamtzemes and will contract. By pulling and loosening on the strap that you're tightening, and that's the point here. One of the reasons, one of the advantages of the Chabad way of doing the tefillin is that when you make your bracha and then you tighten it, you're not just tightening the loop around your arms. You're not just tightening the tefillin that's tighter to your bicep, but you're actually tightening the very knot. Because here's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is ukshartam. The mitzvah is in the making of the actual knot. So the knot itself should loosen and tighten every time you make a bracha. Meaning,
So not just the loop, but the
actual knot.
Not that.
That's correct.
The knot
So
that
you're
you're-
not just tightening it to your
You
hand.
have to open it sometimes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So before you make your bracha, the loop that's holding your tzuah should be somewhat loose, and then as you make the bracha and you pull against it,
It's going to shorten.
it'll actually tighten. So you're not just fastening, and you're not just tightening the box to your bicep. You're actually knotting the very knot. So you're fully doing this mitzvah of ukshaitim to make the actual knot, not just as tightening it to your head. In other words, it's different than the head tefillin. The head tefillin, you're tightening it on your head, and you're making it tighter. In your hand tefillin, if you're doing it right with the Chabad knot, then you're actually tightening the very knot, not just making it tighter against your hand. Because when you pull on the strap that comes out, you're pulling against the very slip knot, which starts to tighten around the very strap you're pulling. Right? And then when you're done, your tefillin, or before you make your bracha, or when you're done before you put it away, you loosen it a bit. So that tomorrow morning, when you put it on again you make the bracha, you tighten, and you're actually tightening the knot. So I've seen people have it so tight that there's no room to go tighter, and they just kind of, the box just goes up and down along the top. It doesn't actually
The
tighten.
blood doesn't circle no.
But the loop doesn't tighten around the strap. First of all, the problem with doing it so tight is that your strap starts to lose its width. And as we talked about already a few times here, there's a minimum width, even though it's not mentioned in the Gemara, but we have from the Gaonim that there is a minimum width. So if it's too tight around your hand, and you lose that width, it's also more likely that you'll lose the color. Every time you're pulling it in and out, you're scratching against the paint. So it shouldn't be so tight. And here also, you're losing this advantage of being able to tighten the very knot itself when you make the bracha. Okay, I just want to highlight that. It's an important thing for those wearing Chabad Tefillin to know this.
I've seen on some tefillin, they don't have the knot's not adjustable.
Sorry?
The knot, it doesn't adjust.
The Chabad Tefillin, it is adjustable.
Yeah, it is, right.
That's the point.
Yeah,
Others are not. I'm not saying it's not kosher, God forbid. But I'm just telling you this is the Chabad custom.
right.
And not even mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. It's, as he says here, it's Mekub Madmor. We received this tradition from the Alter Rebbe, not written in Shulchan Aruch. But this is the Chabad custom, and one should be aware of it. It's a nice little thing you're actually making. You're following with tightening the actual knot, not just tightening it around your bicep, but you're actually tightening the very knot that's tying your tefillin.
Not in the Mavarta, I mean, the continuation of the strap? Or?
Well, what do you mean not in the Mavarta?
Where's the
Well,
actual knot?
okay, you're pulling against the ones coming out here, so it tightens around your bicep through the Mavarta. But what is it pulling on when it comes to the other side of the Mavarta? It's pulling on an actual slip knot that's around the strap.
You actually make a knot, and another knot in the strap then. I guess Ashkenazim don't have a knot, they have just a strap in the Mavarta.
No, there's an actual knot. On the inside here, there's a very knot. There's a slip knot. On the inside here, when it comes out of the Mavarta, there's a slip knot. And through that slip knot, there's the strap that you're pulling on.
Right now, the Ashkenazim have a stick like a...
Does anybody have the Chabad Tefillin here? I can
Yeah, you get to see it.
show you easily.
Yeah.
Should do a demo.
Yeah, you
I have
want
one.
just bring a pair of Chabad
The
Tefillin.
regular Ashkenazim have the Mavarta.
So I'll show
There's
you.
no extra knot. I guess it's something different then. Okay.
No, the Chabad knot is different.
Okay, it's different.
For this very reason,
I wanna see.
as I'm going to explain.
Yeah.
It looks like a Sephard knot from the other side.
No, let me show you. Here.
Yeah, we have to see it. Yeah, it's like the one visualize it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Give me something different.
Okay, so left-handed?
Yeah.
Didn't know. Okay, so right, this goes around the hand. So I'll loosen the slip knot so you can see.
Oh.
You see I'm pulling out here, right? So the strap goes through the mavarta, through the
Right,
bridge
that's right,
here,
that's right.
comes at the other end, and when it comes at the other end, there's a slip knot here. And as I pull on, and you can tighten, there's a slip knot here, which you can tighten
Oh.
and loosen.
Whoa.
Wasn't aware of that. No.
You see?
An extra knot then.
There's an actual knot there. This is not holding it all together.
Yeah.
This slip knot's holding it all together, right? So, and it's connected to this from the other side. So when you put on your tefillin, and you start tightening this more and more and more and more, you start to pull against here. So what's happening is it goes through here and tightens this too, thus tightening your knot. Whoops, I missed that. I blocked that. So it's loose here,
Okay, I see. Oh,
right?
I
And then when you
understand.
pull on the
Now I
strap,
get it. Okay, I get it
when you
now.
pull on the strap,
Oh, it's actually linked, the two of them.
it tightens. This is a slip knot that you're actually tightening.
Okay, so that's
Following?
It's more fixed, yeah.
That's correct. Every single time you make the bracha and tighten here, you're actually tightening the very knot that's holding your tefillin
I
together.
see, like I couldn't visualize it.
Following?
Okay, yeah.
But
So that's what I'm saying. Is be careful not to tighten it too much, that you don't lose the width,
So I actually tighten the knot. Okay.
That's correct. So you're actually tightening the knot.
No.
This is a unique Chabad loop. It's very interesting to
It's an
know.
extra knot.
I'm
Okay.
gonna go ask my Rabbi to
Okay. That's
my
good.
sofer to do that now.
It's kosher. It's a little bit harder. It requires a little more dexterity because with the Ashkenazi way, the tefillin always remain tight on your bicep. You just have to hold it down.
Exactly.
The same thing Ashkenazi with the Sephardi, but with the Chabad tefillin, unless you're tightening it properly, it can pop off your bicep.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so it takes a little more dexterity to hold it in place while you're tightening it.
Yeah.
So my father has a little trick that some people use, where they use a gid. You take a little string, a little kosher string, and you tie it through the mavarta, through the bridge, and hold it against one of the other ends of your knot, so it always stays touching against the
Oh, I'm not.
actual box of tefillin. So when you tighten it, it automatically goes down as opposed to popping up. It's hard to visualize what I'm saying. We don't have that here, but there's a little trick that my father does to
I
fix
do it
that.
after twice.
Those are different customs.
You have Sephard.
Yes, fine. Yeah.
You don't have a Chabad.
No, there's an extra knot. That's the key thing.
Okay,
That's the
so
point.
we don't have a lot of time. I want to introduce.
When you do it twice like this. Yeah.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time, but we have more to cover here.
Okay, just do for tomorrow.
But I want to at least begin the Gemara here, and then tomorrow we'll get into more detail of halacha. But let's begin the Gemara, and we're going to introduce at least the two different opinions in the Gemara, and then tomorrow we'll look at the Shulchan Aruch elaborating on these two opinions, and then we'll get to the Chabad custom, and then we'll get to the Hasidic insight and the difference between the Shel Yad and the Shel Rosh, which is really going to emerge. It already started to emerge now, as we insinuated the difference between tightening on the hand tefillin versus placement on the head tefillin. And the head tefillin is about it being on your head, and the hand tefillin is the tightening on your hand. But tomorrow, we'll learn now about making the bracha on the hand and the head tefillin. Tomorrow we'll elaborate more on that, and then we'll really see to emerge the difference between the hand and the head tefillin and what it means in the Hasidic perspective. So let's learn the Gemara at least now, and we'll get to the halacha tomorrow. Hopefully we'll be able to get through both opinions in the Gemara here.
You do the two brachas
Okay,
for the-
we're gonna learn. This is the source for it.
Much like it.
You're talking the conclusion. Let's back up to how we got to that conclusion. This is the Gemara. Okay, top page on the Vav Medala 36b, 36a. Amar Rav Chisda says, Sach, if one spoke, bein tefillah letefillah, we're going to learn first Rashi's opinion and then Rabbi Tam's opinion, and then we'll leave the halacha for tomorrow. Amar Rav Chisda said, Sach, if one spoke, bein tefillah letefillah, if someone spoke between the tefillin and the other tefillin, so he tightened his hand, he made his bracha, he tightened the hand tefillin, as we just described, and then he spoke, making an interruption, and then he put on his head tefillin. So chayzer mavarech, he makes another bracha on his head tefillin. End quote from Rav Chisda. Gemara comments. So sach in, that means if you make an interruption between your hand tefillin and your head tefillin, then you make another bracha. Loisach, if you don't speak between your hand tefillin and your head tefillin, so you didn't make an interruption, loi, then you're telling me you don't make a second bracha?
That's it.
Question mark? Says the Gemara, no, it's not the case. V'ashalach Rav Chia b'reid Rav Huna. But Rav Chia, son of Rav Huna, sent the following message. Mishmeid Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, as follows. Al Tefillah Shel Yad, for the hand tefillin, Oimer, one makes the bracha, Baruch Atash Malkein Melech Haolam, blessed that you God, our Lord, King of the universe, Asher Kedeshanu Mitzvah, who has sanctified us with his commandments, V'tzivanu, and commanded us, Lahaniach tefillin, to place the tefillin. Al Tefillin Shel Rosh, and when it comes to the head tefillin, Oimer, he makes the bracha, Baruch, etc. Asher Kedeshanu Mitzvah, who has sanctified his commandments, V'tzivanu, and commanded us, Al Mitzvah tefillin, concerning the mitzvah of tefillin. So from the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, it seems that hand tefillin and head tefillin, as I mentioned before, are two separate mitzvahs, so you get two separate brachas. So why are you, Rav Chisda, saying that the making of two brachas are conditional to someone speaking? That is to say, if you don't speak, one bracha for both. You speak, two brachas. Here Rav Yochanan says two brachas anyway, whether you speak or not speak, because they're two separate mitzvahs. Why shouldn't you get two brachas? So contradiction. Answers the Gemara. Abaye v'Rava, again, I'm learning Rashi right now, and I'll get to Rabbi Tam. Abaye v'Rava, Abaye and Rava say, the Amrit Tavayu both explained, Lo yisach, if you don't speak, mevarech achas, you make one bracha. That is to say, if you don't speak, that's what Rav Chisda meant. You're not speaking, So you make your bracha on your hand tefillin, and it covers your head tefillin. But sach, if you did speak, that's when Rav Yochanan says, mevarech shtai, you make two brachas. So when Rav Yochanan said you make two separate brachas, one on your hand tefillin, one on your head tefillin, it's only if you speak. So the resolution is in their very wording, in other words. When Rav Chizda said you make one bracha, it's if you didn't speak, then you can cover, right? Because the rule is we try to minimize in brachas. If you don't have to, you don't make it a bracha. Safek brachas lahakal. When it comes to, if you're in doubt whether or not you make a bracha, you don't make the bracha, because it's a rabbinic commandment. So we try to minimize taking Hashem's name in vain, saying Hashem's name for no reason. So therefore, if you can make one bracha, then you should, if you didn't make an interruption. But if you didn't make an interruption, you have no choice. You have to make a second bracha. So Rabbi Yochanan is teaching you that when you make that second bracha, it's a different bracha for the head tefillin. This is one way of understanding the Gemara.
Isn't it an interruption to make the second bracha?
Interruption from what?
Like you said, if you speak, you make an interruption, right? So you're speaking by making a bracha, and the second...
It's after you're putting it on. Why is that interruption? It's not an interruption. Interruption...
After you're putting it on, I thought every bracha you do it before putting it on.
You do have to put it on before you tighten, as we said before. But besides for that, a bracha is not an interruption. A bracha is part of the tefillin. An interruption means, hey, how are you? That's an interruption. This is part of the doing of the mitzvah. It's not an interruption. It's part of the actual act of the mitzvah.
A good example is kiddush.
Okay.
You make the bracha bor pri kafe.
And then you make a bracha kiddush, and then you eat, drink, yeah. It's part of the mitzvah. It's not an interruption. Okay. We'll get to that in halacha tomorrow, God willing. But I just want to highlight here, specifically, one understanding of the Gemara, Rashi's understanding, and this is brought in halacha according to some opinions we'll see tomorrow, that one bracha has to be made for both hand and head tefillin. That's the ideal, is one bracha. If one spoke, one makes a second bracha. Because you interrupted, and you've lost your first bracha from the Shel Yad to go on your Shel Rosh. And if when you put it in Shel Rosh, when you put on the head tefillin, a separate bracha, and the Rebbe is teaching you that when and if you have to make a second bracha on your head tefillin because you spoke, there's a new bracha. Al mitzvah tefillin versus lahan niyach tefillin. This is one opinion and one reading of the Gemara. The second opinion, second reading of the Gemara comes from Tosfos. So let's look at the Tosfos. The Tosfos is on the margin on the bottom, the big bold word loy. Yeah, you see it? The big bold word loy right in the middle? Yeah. So first he quotes the Gemara. Loy sach, if you didn't speak, mavarech achas, you make one bracha. Sach, if you did speak between your hand and your head tefillin, mavarech shnayim, make two brachas. So says Tosfos, Pirush HaKontres, the pamphlet explained, I mentioned this before, Rashi was called the pamphlet. I guess that's how it was originally published. So it's explained in the pamphlet of Rashi that loy sach, if one doesn't speak, mevarech achas, you make only one bracha, bein shel yad, for the tefillin shel yad, bein shel rosh, and for your tefillin shel rosh, as I just explained. If you don't speak, one bracha covers both. Sach, if you do speak between your shel yad and shel rosh, you make an interruption, mevarech shnayim, you make two brachas. La niach tefillin b'shel yad, you made your first bracha before you spoke, before you did anything, you made your first bracha on your hand tefillin, which is la niach tefillin. And then, because you spoke, you have to make a second bracha, and that second bracha is val mitzvah tefillin b'shel rosh. You make a second bracha al mitzvah tefillin when you put on your head tefillin. That's Rashi's opinion, and that's what we just mentioned. Rabbeinu Tam Pirush, but Rashi's grandson, Rabbi Yaakov, known as Rabbeinu Tam, one of the famous Tosafists. We had him before. He's the famous one who argued with Rashi on the order of the tefillin. Pirush explains, Lo yisach, if you don't speak between your hand and your head tefillin, mevarech achas l'shal rosh, you make one bracha for your head tefillin. That's to say as follows: if you don't speak, then what happens? You make one bracha on your hand tefillin, la niach tefillin, and you make a separate bracha on your head tefillin because it's a new mitzvah, al mitzvah tefillin. Even if you don't speak, because it's two mitzvahs, why shouldn't you make a separate bracha? It's two mitzvahs. So, mavarech achas sharash, even if you didn't speak, you only make one bracha on the head tefillin, which is al mitzvah tefillin, and that's what the Rebbe said. Now, when Rav Chizda said that if you speak, you make twice, what did he mean?
On the Rosh.
So he explains. Shezui brachas is the bracha of the head tefillin. But sach, if you spoke between your hand and your head tefillin, mavarech beis sharash, you have to make now two brachas on your sharash. La'aniach, the first bracha la'aniach, you got to repeat that. Va'al mitzvahs and al mitzvahs. So explain. The bracha you make on the hand tefillin, la'aniach tefillin, goes for both the hand and the head. But now, because the head tefillin is a new bracha, is a new mitzvah, plus, as I mentioned, it's ikar mitzvah. It's the primary mitzvah. and it's more holiness. As explained before, it's more holiness because it has 2 letters of Hashem's name, the Shin and the Dalet, as opposed to the hand tefillin only has a Yud.
So 4 parshas versus 1.
It has 4, all 4 parshas are in both of them, but it has 4 different
separate
compartments.
parshas, yeah.
And it's Ikar mitzvahs explained. We explained the primary mitzvah when you're wearing it is the head tefillin, because the hand tefillin is only in the moment of knotting it. But when you're wearing it, the primary is the head tefillin, because that's a mitzvah continuously. Therefore, even if you don't speak, you make a separate bracha on your head tefillin. Right? But the bracha you made on your hand tefillin also went for your head. So the head tefillin has 2 brachas. One that you made on the hand, and one that you made on itself. Now, if you spoke between your hand tefillin and your head tefillin, so the second bracha on your hand tefillin, al rosh, okay, you're making that anyway. But the bracha you made on your hand tefillin, which was supposed to also connect to your head tefillin, that you ruined by speaking. So you got to make that again. And that's what it means when you say you make the 2 brachas. Not 2 brachas as in one on the hand, one on the head. But 2 brachas as in 2 on the head, but making a total of 3. Once on your hand, once on your head tefillin for its own self, and another one on the head tefillin for the fact that you ruined the bracha you made on your hand tefillin, which is supposed to extend to your head tefillin. You ruined that by speaking. Clear?
So it's 2 of the same bracha?
Yeah, once on your hand, and then repeating it again on your head, because the one from your hand you ruined by speaking, by interrupting between your hand tefillin and the head tefillin. So in conclusion,
So you say al mitzvah tefillin twice on the head?
al mitzvah and then lahaniach.
Menachot twice.
You have to say lahaniach. You're saying lahaniach twice. Once when you put it on your hand, and then because you spoke, you're saying lahaniach again on the head tefillin, plus the al mitzvahs. So the bracha for itself, plus the bracha we're supposed to get from the shoulder, from the hand tefillin. So in conclusion, 2 opinions, and we're going to elaborate on both of these opinions, God willing, tomorrow when we look at the Shulchan Aruch. We're going to elaborate on both these opinions and what the different ramifications are as to how they actually play out, and what the Chabad custom is, and what the Ashkenazi custom is, with making Baruch Shem and all the rest of that. We'll get to that all tomorrow, God willing. But in conclusion, now from 2 readings of the Gemara, we have 2 statements and then a resolution. Rav Chizda said that if you speak, you make 2 brachas. Rav Chizda said you always make 1 on the hand and 1 on the head, 2 separate brachas. So contradiction. So one understand. Rav Chia Amar Rabbi Yochanan.
Yeah.
Right? Brought up from him Rabbi Yochanan. So Rav Chizda said only if you speak you make 2 brachas, and Rabbi Yochanan said you always make 2 brachas. 1 on the hand, no, you always make brachas. He said you make 1 bracha on the hand and 1 bracha on the head. How do we resolve this? Rashi's resolution is that Rabbi Yochanan, who said that you make 1 bracha on the hand and 1 bracha on the head, is only conditional to speaking. And thus if you don't speak, 1 bracha. Rabbi Tam says, no. When Rav Chizda said, Rabbi Yochanan said you make 1 bracha on the hand and on the head, that stays always. But when Rav Chizda says you speak, you make 2 brachas, he's talking about 2 brachas on the head. Now that you spoke, go make 2 brachas. Once because you're supposed to make anyways on the head tefillin, and once because you ruined your hand bracha tefillin. Your hand tefillin bracha. Clear? Those are 2 opinions in the Gemara. Both these opinions come down in the Shulchan Aruch, and God willing we'll get to that tomorrow. And after that, tomorrow we'll also share the Hasidic insight into what's the difference between the hand and the head tefillin and how it's reflected in the halachas we're learning right here in this Gemara.
Yeah, the Rabbeinu Tam's view is the first objection he has. Rabbi Yochanan didn't make any chilukim. It seems to be in general.
That's right.
The second problem is much more a fundamental problem. Is as unusual a make a tekan, an extra bracha on an avera.
Yeah, the simple
That's what Rabbeinu Tam is arguing.
the simple reading of the Gemara actually follows Rabbeinu Tam more than Rashi, which is kind of interesting because usually Rashi, Rashi's commentary usually, you can't usually derive halacha from Rashi's commentary. There are other halacha authorities who agree with Rashi, because Rashi is a commentator on understanding the Gemara, not a halacha commentator, not a halacha commentary. So usually Rashi tries to stick with the simplest reading, even if it doesn't necessarily match up 110% with the halacha, because he's supposed to give you pshat in the Gemara. But over here, actually, he seems to be interpreting the Gemara to fit halacha more than the simple reading of the Gemara, because simple reading of the Gemara follows Rabbeinu Tam better, right? Because Rabbi Yochanan's statement is unconditional.
Unconditional, exactly.
It's unconditional. And besides, according to Rashi, what changed? First, the Gemara says it's a contradiction. The Gemara says no contradiction because Rabbi Yochanan's statement is conditional. What do you mean? That was the contradiction. Rav Chizda said conditional, Rabbi Yochanan said unconditional. Now you're saying it is conditional? Why should I change inside Rabbi Yochanan's statement is conditional? So the simple reading of the Gemara actually follows Rabbi Tam better. But Rashi nevertheless goes with this halacha. We're trying to minimize brachas, and therefore 1 bracha for the hand tefillin, and that extends to the head tefillin, unless you speak and you have no choice. You make a separate bracha for the head tefillin, and God willing, tomorrow we'll get to the more detailed halacha of both these different opinions. Have a wonderful day, everybody.